Hi everyone, welcome. I'm preparing to check in on this bin of red wiggler worms that were last checked in on 10 days ago, and it was at that time that they received feeding number 13. Today's feeding number 14 is almost a carbon copy of what they got last time, 10 days ago, which was watermelon. And I got a whole bunch of it here. This is generally what I would come down here with to the wormery as far as portions go to possibly feed two systems, but I'm going to take my chances and assume that the great majority of what I'm holding here is just moisture content, and I'll treat it as perhaps not as big a feeding as it seems based on its weight, because it is a pretty heavy load of watermelon rind there. And I do believe that what they got last time was a pretty generous portion too, so that might beg the question, why come back in only 10 days? Well, I guess it's pretty obvious. The whole idea is to come back soon enough that we might encounter a worm party working on that last generous portion of watermelon rind. So let's see if that's the case. So it looks like we had laid out a coffee filter here on the surface to mark where we last fed. And since my feeding didn't plan to include a replacement for this, I thought I might set this aside and see if we could use it one more time, squeeze out one more use as a feeding zone indicator, and then next time it's almost likely we won't even see that thing anymore, or at very least if we do, we'll repurpose it as bedding down in the feeding zone. So I didn't comment on it, but when we first arrived you might have noticed how the plastic that was covering the system was pulled in from the edges, allowing for the material out here on the surface on the edges to be a little bit drier, but everything underneath the plastic really took on a nice moisture content to it. I could tell right away from lifting the system when I brought it over to the bench how heavy it was, and that's usually a clear sign that there's a fair bit of moisture in the system. So I figured let's gently peel back the feeding zone to see what we see. There's pretty much worms in every handful, and I was wondering if I might be able to just sort of reveal a little worm party happening without necessarily disrupting it too badly. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing as a general theme down here. Now that we've reached a certain depth, it does seem like we've got ourselves a little worm party happening down there low. I would assume more of the same on this side. Alright, wormies are doing a great job. I don't see any leftovers of the food they got last time, except for possibly a little tiny bit of skin of the watermelon rind, but that's to be expected. That usually takes them a little longer to work down. And, well, oh, I thought I had gotten to the bottom already, but evidently not. So even a little bit deeper now. Wow, look at that. Even more worms down low. And now we've actually encountered the foundational bedding onto which the last feeding was placed, which was a whole bunch of leaves. My plan was to just do the same again today. I got my box of leaves here, and I do believe that I've got enough to be pretty generous down in the feeding zone to lay down more of this foundational bedding before we give them all their lovely frozen watermelon. I guess that's probably a good idea too, because this stuff going in fresh with no worms in it, the new bedding will serve as a little bit of an insulator so that big pile of frozen foods doesn't end up coming in contact with any of the system's inhabitants. Holy camole. I was just kind of brushing some material aside, and I guess there's a piece of paper or a coffee filter in here or something, an old feeding zone indicator that the worms are kind of huddled on. They're just being social, hanging out, enjoying each other's company. A good many of the worms are still out here, exposed to the light, but all the ones that were out here just sort of vanished, but very few ended up leaving my hand. They're all pretty much still right there, but in a place where there's no direct light hitting them. And now we can take a look at what this, oh, there's all the wormies. Yeah, this was just maybe a piece of paper towel or some sort of bedding material, and it was clearly a spot that the worms were finding to be a popular, cozy spot to hang out. Alright, so that was kind of nice too, pulling up all that loose, well, no, that's the thing, it wasn't very loose, all that leafy matter down low, and kind of just blending it in with the surrounding materials. It was all kind of nice and damp already, and well seasoned from being down in here in the bin for the past 10 days. So I guess these old pieces of paper are what I wonder about. When will they be gone? Hopefully soon. Let's bring in our leaf supply, and we'll sprinkle in a little bit of leafy matter down low. This way our conscience can be clear as we give them their lovely large portion of watermelon rind. I guess the other thing I was sort of casually looking for while we were looking through here, examining their feeding zone, was if I could find any more of this cracker here. Crisp bread, flaxseed, sesame seed, and quinoa. So those are the different types of things. When I last gave these worms a piece of this cracker, 2 pieces just like this, the stuff had been soaked. So I gave it a good bit of moisture. So by the time I went into the bin, they were totally drenched. This time they're going in dry. And I've fed these in a few other places, but this is at this point the last of it, the last of those crackers. But since I didn't see anything, this was the first place I fed any of those crackers. They ended up in a few different locations, but it does seem to me like they've been getting consumed and enjoyed, hopefully, by the worms. So I'm just debating, do I give them coffee too? I told myself I'd hold off and wait and see if I would want to give them coffee, depending on how much this appeared to be, because it did appear to me like a fair amount. And well, since it's right here within reach, I couldn't resist grabbing it and giving it to them. And now we can backfill the feeding zone. So this is our chance to blend in even more leaves. All these leaves that are out on the surface and just nudged aside can now get incorporated into the surrounding materials. And I'll tell you, I had a different sort of idea of what the material in this system would be like when we came in here today after all that watermelon we gave them last time. Like I said, comparable to what they just got here as far as the amount. I thought we were going to have a much soggier, messier system here. But I believe what we're doing right now is the key to preventing that from happening, is making sure that you're pretty generous with the bedding, as we've been here in this system. And it's kind of nice to have a type of bedding, in this case leaves, that blends in nicely, you know. So it seems like it's giving the material in the system some really terrific texture, and at the same time I'm assuming it's making it into a really healthy and comfortable place for the worms to be. Now, you know, I'm spotting a couple little flying insects over here. Something I don't really remember seeing too much of. For that matter, I've not even used any of my mosquito dunks lately. And I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say perhaps it's a good idea to give the system a quick little treatment of the mosquito dunks, just in case we've got some flying insects getting any wise ideas. This should put their plans to a halt pretty quickly. So if any of that last feeding is still showing through here, like that chunk of watermelon right there, I'm not too worried, because guess what? We're covering all that up one more time now with even more leafy matter. And yeah, that's a pretty nice looking system. I might not have been as generous on this go around with the top coating. That's okay. I think this is a pretty nice setup that we've given them here. There was a lot of leftover reusable bedding from last time, so we weren't, you know, too skimpy. We gave the system a little treatment of bedding, but maybe we'll be more generous next time. As far as this feeding zone indicator goes, we're definitely replacing it next time. It's going to be hard to tell where we last fed if that's our feeding zone indicator. I think we'll figure it out. we should be okay. Now, the final question is, do we try to hang on to all that moisture? Do we anticipate muddy, messy environment, and we don't want to hang on to all the moisture that we just deposited in here along with the food in the form of all that watermelon rind? Well, I have no objection to the way things looked when we came in here, so perhaps a little breathing room on this cover wasn't a bad idea, and we can follow suit and do it again. So I think that's it. I've got a few things I got to take care of getting cleaned up and put away here, but I'm not going to waste your time with that. That's boring. Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.